Welcome back to segment 2. This is our Banzuke discussion for the Tachiai Aki 2022 podcast. Joining me is site creator Andy. Say hello.
Hey, Bruce.
And our man in foreign lands, our correspondent with all the stats and all the knowledge, and who gets to talk to all the fun people, Josh. Say hello.
Hello.
So you may have already witnessed segment 1 where we covered Sumo news, and here we're going to dive into the specifics of the Aki Banzuke, which was released just a little bit under a week ago as we record this. And I'm going to start with what we've referred to as the Sanyaku 6. This could only have come about due to the absolute insanity with trying to rank everyone after that freaking disaster of a final week. And I call it a disaster of a final week because somewhere between a quarter and a third of all of the top division Rikishi were COVID Kyujo because someone in their stable had popped positive for Omicron. And so what are they going to do? You had a bunch of people with elevated records. You had a bunch of people on winning streaks who had to sit. I don't envy the Banzuke team. I'm sure they went through a couple of really large bottles of sake to get through it. Most of the top performers in the Banzuke team were on suicide watch. Right, I'm happy to report that Leonard, our prognosticator, made it through alive, and we ended up with 3 Ozeki, 3 Sekiwake, and 3 Komosubi. So folks may not know this, but there's a little sub-thread in some parts of Japanese culture where they like to have fun number jokes and number games. And the 3, 3, and 3, and I've watched the scheduling team do this with the Torikumi from time to time, and it's fun to watch because I'll admit I'm a bit of a number nerd as well. And so I think once they ended up with one of the Sanyaku ranks at 3, they said, why not just go 3, 3, and 3 for 3? Right? I'm just like, great. San. Absolutely nuts. So, Andy, your first reaction when the Banzuke came out?
Oh, I mean, it seemed like it was the only way to do it fairly, because Hoshoryu deserved promotion, and I mean, when you look through it, it just seemed like Daisho didn't deserve a demotion, and then Ichinojo and Kirabayama both deserved promotions. I thought the only thing that I would have maybe changed might have been Ichinojo to Sekiwake. I mean, everything else, just it seemed like that was the way that it kind of had to be in fairness, because, like you said, that whole situation was just bizarre, and trying to be able to make out like who deserves to fall and who deserves to rise when you've only got like 3/4 or 2/3 of a real tournament of action. It was just very, very difficult. And Mitake Yumi is probably counting his lucky stars that he's not the 4th Sekiwake, when he likely should have been. But then it's not really fair to expect a great first few days when you've got COVID. So it does seem like it kind of worked out as fairly as it could.
Josh, reactions on the Banzuke?
I think maybe the weirdest one in 11 years and 4 months since that one. It seems like it's certainly the strangest one since then in terms of various movements, crazy over promotions, and just the unpredictability of what the committee would do. You know, a lot of times we might see a head scratcher, but it's generally when we do, it's a guy who's off by a rank or 2 from what their score would indicate. This time you see Midori Fuji and Hirata Umi, you know, guys that really benefited from that policy to withdraw entire stables in the middle of the Basho. And I think the thing that made the reveal of this Banzuke so interesting in particular is that normally, you know, you have things like Guess the Banzuke and games like that, and by and large, you know, you kind of know about where someone will be ranked, right? That's the science part of making the Banzuke. And then the art of it, which is kind of, Bruce, what you were referring to with our buddy LK Sumo, is understanding the Kyokai and what they will do in certain situations. So there's the math part, and then there's the sort of getting inside the brains of these guys to try and figure out what they're going to do. And I think because this last Basho was almost farcical at times and totally unprecedented, in that sense, it actually made the reveal of the Banzuke more of a surprise event than it usually is.
Yeah, I would agree. When I first saw this Banzuke, I was like, yeah, okay, you know, there are situations in real life where everything goes to hell and you try to just get through it with your pants on, and I think that's pretty much where we ended up with this one. The one of the big problems that showed up was that, as everyone pointed out, was trying to rank these people who were forced to not compete, and so, you know, it was a complete train wreck. But one of the things that really interests me is that we have Tobizaru and Midori Fuji both at Majishira 1. So Midori Fuji, okay, he went 10-5. That's pretty good, right? But 10-5 from Majishira 11 all the way to Majishira 1, I just look at that and I'm like, all right, what are you doing, people? Andy, did you have any similar surprises?
You know, I think Endo was my big question mark. He preserved his rank when he probably should have tumbled quite a bit. But I'm really enjoying the fact that Tobizaru and Midori Fuji are up there. I know Midori Fuji is quite a bit of an unknown. I mean, well, it's the highest he's gotten up there
by a big measure.
Well, and he's not going to have to compete against Teruno Fuji, obviously, and so being able to be the unknown seems to play to their advantage quite a bit, especially since his style, like that kata tsukashi, is something that's pretty unusual in and of itself. I mean, he's not just a small rikishi like Tobizaru or Wakataka Kage. He's not somebody who's just undersized and talented. He has like some novel tricks that I think will play to his advantage this tournament. So rather than Tobizaru, he's been in the Joy, he's already kind of like a known quantity among these guys. Midori Fuji, he's beaten Hoshoryu. He's beaten a lot of these guys several times, other than Ichinojo. Like Ichinojo's the one who just kind of dominates him, but Ichinojo's
so freaking huge.
I mean, yeah, exactly. And so I think that Midori Fuji is probably going to have a very successful tournament, I hope.
Okay, great. So Josh, back. I mean, we're going to set the Wayback Machine to Natsu of last year, when Tobizaru was up at Majishira 2, and I was very big on Tobizaru, and I said, hey, do you think Tobizaru's on his way up, or is he overranked? And you said, yeah, he's overranked, and he then proceeded to turn in a string of double-digit losses, and was Maki Koshi for a full year following that. Well, now he's back up there, and he's been looking kind of strong. Do you think he might stick this time, Josh?
No.
Right back.
I don't. Easy. Bruce was like, let's do a fast podcast. No, I don't. I mean, I think, the thing about this Banzuke that's really, interesting. I think it correct me if I'm wrong. It's probably the first one in a long time where we're just down to, the Maegashira 16 ranks, and we don't have like Maegashira 17, Maegashira 18. So in that context, like, I don't think it's, problematic that we have this like expanded Sanyaku with the 3 Ozeki and the 3 Sekiwake and the 3 Komusubi. But it is a little bit of, an indictment of like where Sumo's at, and like no disrespect to Tobizaru, who I love. But when you look at those guys in that expanded Sanyaku ranks, you sort of throw it back 5 years and we have like 2 or 3 Yokozuna, and then like 3 or 4 Ozeki, and then like, you could make a claim that like the guys who were ranked in the top 10 highest ranks in the sport were with the 10 best guys. And even at that time, the guys who were ranked Maegashira 1 and Maegashira 2 were just getting stomped. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so, there's a real opportunity for these guys right now. But that being said, do I have the expectation that either of them are going to Kachikoshi at this rank? I don't. But because we can't trust our crew of Ozeki right now, I do think that probably they'll both pull off a stunning win, and they'll get to go to the interview room, and we'll talk about in 2 months' time how they had a 5-10 and they gave it their best. So that's what I think is going to happen.
Brutal, but very much on point. I want to talk about one other piece of the Banzuke, and that was that Kaisei had dropped to Makushita 1 East and promptly decided to retire. Kaisei is Intai. Magnificent career spanning 60 tournaments in the top division. 2 Jun Yusho, 3 Kanto Sho. His highest rank ever was Sekiwaki. He was a star of Amazumo, right? Amateur Zumo. And he'd been in professional sumo since 2006. In addition, he's generally considered to be, among a population of nice guys, a genuinely kind and friendly person. Josh, do you want to say any comments on the career of Kaisei?
Yes, I have quite a lot, which will surprise no one. I'm going to miss Kaisei. I think it was his time. Obviously, his body caught up with him. His sumo became fairly one-dimensional in recent years. But when you talk about the real fan favorites, as you say, Bruce, he has to be up there. Obviously, for us as foreigners, we often tend to follow the success stories of the foreign Rikishi, but he's also someone who is a real fan favorite among Japanese fans as well. I've met a lot of people at Basho who are big Kaisei supporters. As you say, a real friendly figure, always made time for fans. Hopefully that continues, as I'm sure it will, in retirement as a member of the Kyokai, as Tomazuna Oyakata. And I think also in a sport when it's not possible always to show emotion, he always gave great facial expressions, win or lose. He was a great competitor. One final comment that I think I'd make in light of Kaisei's retirement is, he had a lot of flavor to the sport, and I do wonder with the shrinking numbers of recruits that we're seeing now, whether it's time to revisit that rule of 1 foreigner per heya. Obviously, he's from Brazil, for people who may not know, and it might be a sensitive time with the Kyokai to have that conversation now because there's so many foreign Rikishi like him who are moving into roles in the Kyokai as they start to retire this last wave of really excellent Rikishi from the last 15 years. But if you understand why that rule was put in place, it's because you had stables, especially in the 70s and 80s, who had, for example, 6 guys from Tonga in the same stable at the same time, or 5 Americans or whatever it was at Azumazaki Bay, all from Hawaii in the same hey, and maybe not assimilating with the culture. I don't know. I wasn't there. But, I think if they can maybe create a rule, or maybe a stable can have 2 foreigners from different countries where the only language they have in common is Japanese, that probably won't disrupt the harmony, and it creates another opportunity to see someone from Brazil like Kaisei come back into the sport again in the future, especially at a time when a lot of the foreign recruits that we're seeing because of the way the amateur sumo works are coming from Mongolia. And I think we mentioned in our first segment today things like the new YouTube channel and everything the Kyokai is trying to do to get sumo to people in foreign places. And Kaisei was from a very unique place. We know for sure there will be another Mongolian recruit in sumo, but where's the next Kaisei going to come from? And that's what I hope to see.
Andy, your thoughts on Kaisei and the end of his rather amazing sumo career?
Well, and to back up on that, I think that it will be very interesting, especially with the ties between Brazil and Japan, to see whether there's going to be I guess kind of a surge in people of Brazilian descent, and I think that there's a pretty sizable population of them around Aichi Prefecture, who might, I guess, become recruits or be able to get into the way that you're seeing some people kind of get around the foreigner restrictions by living in Japan for a while or having Japanese descent. And so maybe Kaisei might be able to tap into a little bit more of that. But overall, I think that what I've really most enjoyed from Kaisei was just the fact that he seemed to just always enjoy sumo.
Yep.
I mean, he seemed to always be having fun out there. And along with Hakuho, and those are the kind of sentiments that it's always great to see among the wrestlers, and it's always one of the favorite things of really any sport. I mean, when you like to see the guys who are out there and having fun and enjoying themselves, and so it's definitely sad to see Kaisei go. but I'm looking forward to seeing what he can do as a coach and carry on that Tomozuna name. That it was interesting to do a little bit of more research into that Tomozuna name and kind of tracing it back to I'm blanking on the name of his oyakata, but it started with a Kai and
Kaiki.
Kaiki. That's it, Kaiki. Yeah, thank you. And the way that I guess he's gonna kind of carry that torch, and yeah, I look forward to seeing whether he's going to, I guess, continue in a stable or if he's going to break out and form his own and independent.
I have a prediction. I predict he's going to align himself with Kakuryu.
Oh, that'd be interesting.
Oh, yeah.
That'd be very interesting.
All right, with that, we're going to wrap our Banzuke discussion for Aki 2022. Thank you very much for watching through this. My thanks to Josh, our man in foreign lands, Tachiai founder, Andy. Join us for our next segment where we will talk about the Aki 2022 Basho itself. And remember, folks, for Sumo, it's Tachiai.